Hi, I'm Tamara, and I wanted to make a bio that was more of a concept of how I became who I am in my thoughts and way of looking or perceiving. And thought, pretty much the concept of thought comes from only really your own experiences. And in my young life, I was raised in San Francisco. I can't even remember at this school the first day there because I was really young and I was a pianist. I think I started piano around the time I could walk, and I certainly can't remember that day either. But San Francisco Conservatory was a huge experience of many teachers. My grandfather, Clyde Ross, was definitely throughout my life, or his life, inspired me to always quantify thyself with honesty. And yes, mistakes I did galore, but I had really wonderful teachers, him and Sylvia Jenkins, who helped the course of events. Sylvia Jenkins was the first piano teacher I really distinctly remember, and she was so gracious. And the other person that was huge and instrumental in my life and studies and areas of walking was my Aunt Juju, Dr. Sylvia Fitton Jackson. She became really the mother for me as far as having time, and inspired me to be very gutsy and do things that weren't done. This is my own park, Golden Gate Park, and this is essentially where I learned to ride, especially combined training. I had a salty thoroughbred ex-racehorse who had paid his dues, Dare Me Daryl, which I renamed Gila. He was 16 3 hands, a little narrow-chested, very up and down on his front pasterns, but boy did he teach me how to stay on. And around 12 and a half, I was put onto the harp. Up until then I was a pianist, and as you can see it has 7 pedals. But really between my music and this park, Golden Gate Park, which ended at the Great Highway, where we had a wonderful place where we could cross the road with our horses and push the light so the traffic would stop. And of course, a school that really gave infrastructure to study, research, graciousness, and not to take yourself out of focus, even if everything around you is out of focus. And I must say, the school was so beautiful, and it brought beautiful thoughts out, even if your personal life was undergo. This bridge I commuted over constantly. Our farm was first in Petaluma, and then of course when I was even smaller we lived in Marin County. But between of course we didn't have the internet. I was in libraries and studying, and when I got this picture of staircase in my old school, I had to put it in. But my grandfather kept the even keel, so your head didn't get big and you didn't get wrapped up in the moment. And he was real salt of the earth person, and I loved history. So Golden Gate Park was, my brother and I, we had incredible moments. Even the buffalo, my horses spooked at nothing. Mary here is one of the many teachers I had, but she had incredible patience for, I was doing 3 languages, French, German, and ancient Hebrew. And she would untangle my head and have incredible patience doing so. This is a beach below my mother's house that I used to walk and jog on for the days that jogging was popular, because my horses were getting more fit than I. But it also was a beach that gave me a lot of resonance to not running away with myself as far as my frustrations. And Mildred Dilling had a great deal to do with that, as well as teaching etiquette. She taught you how to study many, many pieces. And Ann Adams, she was a very gracious lady. And the many, many stories that Mildred Dilling had of Harpo Marx. I put this in because it gravitates to how expansive, even though I was very focused at an early age, that I was around many people and teachers, mostly teachers, that had huge depth in time and science and music, and they gave and incorporated it in their teaching. It wasn't just a linear way of teaching. So learning how to be part of the orchestra and being on stage at a young age really helped quantify my writing. And I got out early on my credits and was able to go to Dominican College for a while. I still graduated with my class, but it gave me something to do with my mind. And I'll never forget Lou Harrison, because even as young as I was, he was a monster of a person, his presence. And Dennis Decato, he was incredibly patient. We were just kids, and we were doing big chunks of music, and we got to experience so much. Not all of my bio here is chronological, but I was invariably going back and forth to my aunt at Darwin College, but we got to the International Youth Festival, and one of the places we got to play was Edinburgh, which I'll never forget, and the Crystal Palace, another thing. It was the 200th anniversary of the United States, and we did West Side Story, and it's all choreographed with fireworks, and it was pretty interesting how they set it up that morning and everything. But this embodies more of how I work and how I came to perceiving things and questioning things, and the experience of getting up in front of that many people at such a young age really helped me later on in competing horses at a higher level and meeting people. I mean, lots of people. Chuck Mangione was the Monterey Jazz Festival moment that year, but Van Cliburn, meeting him in Aberdeen, and of course Walter Susskind. But these were sort of off-the-shoulder things I was experiencing at a really young age, and I didn't know how much I was assimilating at the time. I didn't quantify it as such, but I was supposed to go to USC, and I had finished doing that and doing all the testings for that, and one of the judges there for the performance end of it said, "You don't belong here, you belong at Juilliard." So I was really surprised, and I thought they were completely bonkers. But I went to Juilliard, and my wonderful godmother, Louise Minot Mosley, helped me for a while. But Susan McDonald was not only a wonderful teacher, she also taught the individual. She didn't do it on a ABA way. And of course her teacher was Henriette Renier, which I believe to be probably the greatest harpist that ever lived, in my opinion. And I love her Legend Concerto, which is hardly done. Grangeny was a teacher before Susan McDonald, and I knew him in Berkeley. He would visit sometimes for our clinic, like Mildred Dilling did. But Susan McDonald was really something. She was could have gone into professional golf and didn't. But I got married to John Lawson Sr., the third. He was also in that class at Juilliard, and he was a prodigy. And so that was pretty something, because I married into a harp family, and here's his mom, my mother-in-law. And she was quite something. She was a very distinguished player. She could really play a concert, and as you can see here, this is very early on in her career, way before she had John. But the ilk of these people, since I was a child, and people like this, I knew that lady personally, were really different. The equine world in the 60s and 70s, and well, even 50s, but I wasn't appreciative then. Like Emerson Burr, it was a different time and age, and they really passed part of the baton on in the spirit of how they taught. And I did know Sissy, and Mr. Steinkraus, or Bill Steinkraus, was really a neat person. Mikolka was really fun. He was more than fun, he was very academic. He's the one that broke down long reigning for me, and really helped me with Hoyte Call, or what they call Hoyte Call, of understanding the physics more, and the spirit of it, and how each horse is different. Bubba Bill, or Bill Depew, I should say, was an incredible inspiration and taught me all about my leg work and feeding. And here is his horse, Nola Hasi, who was his horse of his lifetime, that he spoke of over and over again.
They're at the post. All standing well as we wait for a start. And they're off for the lead. Looking for the lead is Reba Ridge in the center of the track. Hold your piece on the inside. Also Dr. Neal between horses. Then on the outside is Hossy's Image. Right along real sensitive music. Up on the outside is Majestic Needle and No Le Ate. They're coming by the stands, and Reba Ridge is the leader. He leads it by a length and a half. On the outside, the challenge is Majestic Needle in second. Hold your piece is third along the rail. Followed by Dr. Neal in fourth. Hossy's Image is fifth. Into the rail in sixth is No Le Ate. Then moving back in the field, it is Spectalia. It's the Tivo. Along the inside, sensitive music. Then head of the river. On the outside, Free Text, Big Spruce, Napoise, Big Brown Bear, Kentuckian, and the trailer is Our Trade Wind. Moving to the back stretch, and on the back stretch, it's Reba Ridge, the leader by 1 length, and Hold Your Peace is now moved up. He has second and is moving alongside Reba Ridge. There is a challenge now. Dropping back a bit in third is Majestic Needle. Beginning to move up is Hossy's Image to challenge for third. No Le Ate holds fifth on the outside. On the inside it's Dr. Neal. Further back, beginning to move a bit, is Introductivo, and Free Text is also beginning to move up. We're into the turn. It's still Reba Ridge by a half a length, and Hold Your Peace is second by 7 lengths. Much further back, Hossy's Image is third. No Le Ate in fourth. Goes through along the rail. The challenge takes over third now. Then on the outside is Sensitive Music now sixth. Continuing in seventh is Dr. Neal. They're coming forward ahead of the stretch. That's Reba Ridge, the leader by 1 length. Hold Your Peace is holding second. Now drops into the rail. Now Reba Ridge and Hold Your Peace are still close together. No Le Ate is gaining ground in third. Further back in fourth, it is still Introductivo. Coming to the wire, it's Reba Ridge under a hand ride by 5 lengths. It's No Le Ate going by to take second, and Hold Your Peace third. Coming to the wire, it's Reba Ridge. No Le Ate, Hold Your Peace, Introductivo. At the finish, you saw him go on to win it very comfortably. Reba Ridge, No Le Ate clearly second in the race. Hold Your Peace retiring third.
In 1986, I realized I didn't want to commercialize dressage, and my lifestyle changed dramatically through economics, and went back into racing where I could gallop and exercise ride. So I brought really my background in dressage and 3-day, and I was very fortunate. I got to work for Frank Stella, and continued to decode, if you will, by the advantage of just, really fine blood stock yearlings and some 2-year-olds that were coming back and forth from Belmont and other tracks. And then simultaneously I would take visits back to England and see my aunt. And my aunt came here a lot, and I had an equestrian center, Gettysburg Equestrian Center. And I continued to hone my style from Newmarket galloping and to the American galloping, which is quite different. And then I got a sponsor that allowed me to go back into the sport horses, Stu Hyatt. Even though he was a big CEO in Saatchi & Saatchi, he was at the end of his career, semi-retired, and we got to do several of his horses, and he really allowed for my expression, which I was doing cross-training, or you would call it cross-training. Soon after, 15 years or so of that, in an equestrian center, I got married again to Gordon Bricker Stafford of Stafford Farms, which in fact is kind of funny because a couple of decades before I met Gordon, we were already fans of Overskate, and Stu Hyatt had us go, and I lived in Millbrook at Amory Winthrop Ripley's farm there, and so when they built Millbrook Stud, it was apropos that I'd already met Jack Stafford's one of his many successful horses, and I sort of had I did have a lot of respect for the Stafford Farms horses, because inevitably they've done a lot. So I go from marrying one of the biggest families in harp history to one of certainly the biggest families in racing of Canada anyway. And don't you know, I wanted to bring forth, since Stafford Farms is not what it was, I wanted to bring forth quality, not quantity. And in 2008, with my son, I was staying in Oregon at my grandfather's place, and I put together my first cyberspace interactive equine site. And I did it with the seventh generation of a Stafford's Farm filly that I had bred with Van Nistelrooy in a partnership that's no longer. And so what I wanted to do was get back to basics of a few good horses and have cyberspace equine owners that would follow their own thoroughbred for dollars a month rather than owning it outright, and I would be free on the ground to really collaborate with great vets and do the right thing by the horse, and also do research and education along the way about legwork and all that. I've had two websites. I think it was Equine Global and Global Horse Owner. And today I'm excited because this is my third try now. The content never blew up any of my websites. It was the zealousness of different people on the ground. And I'm really putting the focal point, if you will, at here at Global Equine Perspective, is to be really targeted for the research and science and development of technology applications towards the health, welfare, and training of the equine, whether it be race horses, sport horses, trail horses. It's really the wonderful science and technology, and sharing it with the internet in cyberspace to all the continents of the globe, and have perspectives from all the continents on the globe. You might say it might turn into a medley, but there are a lot of roads to Rome, as they say, and I'm really looking forward to bringing further along the development and teaching skills that the horses afford us here at Global Equine Perspective. I know this is a funny overview. There's so many teachers I left out, and I'll have to do more integral breakdown. But this is really a perspective of how I became an a la decoder of the geometry. And I didn't want to leave out Leroy Jolly. He told me years ago, he said, every trainer, good trainer, has a key, and when you find your key, you stick with your key. And my key really has come about through vicariously my music and my places that I've grown up and lived, and the main focus being I've just loved horses since I can't remember. I don't remember how old I was. I can say my father would go out of his way to drive around horse farms when I was like 4 or 5 years old, because I would dog him to get a pony. So with wonderful trainers and perspective, science and technology, I hope we see you in cyberspace.